Good morning. I'm Katie Montgomery Mears. I'm one of the pastors on staff at St. Luke's, and I am glad to be with you this morning for our In It Together devotional. So today I want to talk to you about a prayer practice that is really important to me. But first I want to tell you a story, and I wonder if any of you have ever heard it. It's about sleeping with bread. This came about after World War II when there were children in England that had been orphaned after the bombing raids, and they were sent to refugee camps, and though they were being fed and sheltered and safe, they just wouldn't sleep at night. And the adults that were there were trying to get them to go to sleep, and they weren't having any success because these kids would wake up in the middle of the night and they were so scared. And one of the adults finally had the idea, let's let them sleep with a loaf of bread. Because a lot of what these kids were scared of was that they would be hungry again. Many of them had been living on the streets by themselves after they had been orphaned. They hadn't eaten until they'd gotten to this refugee camp. And so they realized if we send them to bed with a loaf of bread that they can hold on to, if they sleep with the bread, then they might feel comforted. And that actually worked. The kids would go to bed with a loaf of bread in their arms, and when they woke up in the middle of the night, what it reminded them of is, I ate today and I will eat again tomorrow. When I was in seminary, I learned about the prayer practice called the Examen that came from St. Ignatius of Loyola. And that is actually what that prayer practice kind of does for us as well. But instead of with eating, it's about God. We are reminded that God was with us all day today and that God will be with us tomorrow. Matthew and Dennis and Sheila Lynn have written a great book called Sleeping with Bread about the Examen prayer practice. And that's really one of the books that I first read to learn about this. If you ever pick it up, and I highly recommend that you do, it looks like a children's book. It's illustrated like a children's book, but the content is very much for adults. Anyway, so here's what the practice of the Examen looks like. It looks like examining your day. And the word examine in English is to look really closely at something. And this is spelled a little bit differently, but that's what we're doing. We're looking really closely at our day. And so I have found that doing this practice at night is especially helpful. So what you do as the first step of it is you open yourself up to God. Make yourself aware of the presence of God. Invite the Holy Spirit to be with you and to be a light that would shine on whatever it is that you need to see. And then step 2, consider your day. What made up your day today? What were the high moments? What were the low moments? What were the things that really evoked a lot of feeling in you, whether it was happy and joyful feelings or feelings of excitement or anger or sadness or frustration? What were all of the things in your day that really meant something to you? Now, this isn't meant to be like a moment by moment examination of your day. That's why you prayed for the Holy Spirit at the beginning, to help you have revealed what it is that you need to think more deeply about. This is meant to be what are those big moments in your day, whether they were good or bad, and what feelings did they evoke in you? What emotions, what reaction? How did you respond with your words, or was there something that you really deeply felt? I know that many of you have heard me talk about John O'Donohue before. I love him, and I talk about his book of blessings called To Bless the Space Between Us. But he wrote another book called Benedictus, and in it he has a list of questions that he closes out the day with. And they're called mirror questions because they're really meant to make us look deeply inside of ourselves. And so I want to go through some of these questions with you and just listen to them, because these are great ways to sort of examine your day in step 2. Where did my eyes linger today? Where was I blind? Where was I hurt without anyone noticing? What did I learn today? What did I read? What new thoughts visited me? What differences did I notice in those closest to me? Whom did I neglect? And where did I neglect myself? What did I begin today that might endure? How were my conversations? What did I do today for the poor and the excluded? Did I remember the dead today? Where could I have exposed myself to the risk of something different? Where did I allow myself to receive love? With whom today did I feel most myself? What reached me today? How deep did it imprint? Who saw me today? What visitations had I from the past and from the future? What did I avoid today? From the evidence, why was I given this day? The most important question to ask yourself in all of this is, how was I aware of God's presence today? Or maybe, was I not aware of God's presence today? And let that lead you into prayer. You'll pick one of the things that you thought about that really evoked a deep reaction or emotion in you, or maybe what'll come to you is that something big happened and it didn't evoke anything, and maybe that's something worth exploring. And so take one of the things that the Holy Spirit has revealed to you and let that lead you into a conversation with God and with deeper prayer. And so spend some time talking to God about that thing. And then to close, look at tomorrow. The next thing is to look forward to the future, to give it to God, to ask God for the strength to get through tomorrow's challenges. As you think about what you have ahead, like a calendar review of the day for tomorrow, to ask God to be a part of those things and to start to think, like, what emotions will that stir up in me? And you might face them a little bit differently. I think this is a really helpful practice to develop a prayer life if you're just starting to develop a prayer life, or maybe like somebody said to me recently, they pray, but it's really mostly when they just need stuff or in hard times or want something. And this can be a really helpful practice to get you in the habit of daily prayer. For me, I've been praying the Examen at night for 6 or 7 years now, and it is the thing that gives me peace at night before I go to sleep. And it's a practice that has become a part of my routine to the point that I'm not even sure that I would be able to fall asleep well at night if I didn't do it. In Psalm 90:12, the psalmist writes, "Help us to number our days, that we may become wise." That's what the Examen does. It helps us to mark our days. It helps us to number them. It helps us to acknowledge each day as something special and important and a gift from God that's worth looking at more closely. It's worth looking at how we reacted so we might react differently and more fruitfully in the future. It's worth looking at what stirred us up so we'll know where our deep emotions are, and having God be a part of that journey, because God is there even on those days when we think, I didn't feel God at all. That's something for us to examine as well about ourselves. If you pick up this practice, if you try the Examen, I would love to hear about it. I hope you'll send me an email, or if you have any questions about it and you want to talk more deeply about it, reach out to me. I would love to talk to you.